Blog Talk Radio.
Hello, this is Call Talk for Wednesday, April 14th. Our topic today is complaints, how 3% of calls can take 30% of your time, strategies to manage them. During the call, we invite you to ask questions via email at calltalk@benchmarkportal.com, chat them on calltalk.tv, or call in to ask the host your questions and interact with the show. The number to call in is 347-857-3117. Everyone who asks a question via email or phone on the show will receive a free copy of Bruce's book, Benchmarking at Its Best, and one person will be chosen at random to win an in-depth reality check benchmarking report valued at $1,500. And now I'd like to introduce the host of Call Talk, Bruce Belfiore.
Thank you very much, Sean, and welcome back to Call Talk, everyone. Our listeners chose today's topic, complaints, how 3% of the calls can take 30% of your time. And my guest today is John Chatterley, who's been on the show before. John has over 30 years' experience in really every aspect of the call center industry, from building call centers to staffing them to studying them and writing about them. He was co-author of a book on offshore outsourcing and is one of my collaborators on a book I'm completing this year on outsourcing. So how are you doing today, John?
Well, Bruce, I don't know. I can't complain.
Okay. Good one, John. Good one. And if you do, I think I'll just escalate you to Sean. Anyway, well, to all of our listeners, we hate to complain about this topic you all picked, but it is a huge topic that can only be kind of scratched in half an hour. So John and I have agreed to try to give it as much structure as possible so that we can provide some useful tips that we hope can actually help you and still have time for you to call in or email us and question or complain about what we've said. If you've tuned into the show, we're sure you probably are anxious for some strategies to handle complaints so they take less of your time and less of your emotional energy. That's actually a big part of it. You're probably also keen for ways to coach your people so they can handle complainers better and so that they don't get escalated and so that the agents themselves don't get burned out. And you'd probably like a strategy for executive complaint handling. Those pesky callers who insist on talking to the CEO and to vent and rage about just how bad your products and your services or your people are. Aren't they wonderful? And, of course, there was one old strategy that I found in one call center years ago, which was just to hang up on the sourpusses, but that approach is now officially frowned upon, has been eliminated from the Book of Best Practices. The other thing, that we shouldn't forget, John, is that complaints can be what I call dark pearls. They're sources of information you can really use to improve your center or to pass on to your product people to consider in their product development. And here, building a radial organization, which is something we've talked about in other sessions, is important so that you have sort of the ability to communicate with other parts of your enterprise. But first, John, to frame this issue, how important it is, I know you did some research in the BenchmarkPortal database to find out how prevalent complaints are in different industries. What did you find there?
Well, I turned up some things that you might expect, but also some that are very interesting that you might not suspect. First of all, overall across all industries, the complaint ratio of calls is about 7.5%. The industry sector with the highest ratio of complaints at nearly 20%, 19.79%, is the auto manufacturing industry. And perhaps our listeners today won't be that surprised considering the extensive amount of press that Toyota has received and other manufacturers on their recalls. But It's a huge number.
That's a very high number. I remember, too, I know that probably exactly the phenomenon you're talking about is having an impact, but I did see just recently some figures for a European auto manufacturer, and their figures for complaints were quite high, too, in terms of percent. So
yes.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I just wanted to point out that our listeners should realize that a high level of complaints might lead them to the press if they follow the track of auto manufacturing, which would be terrible. So we need to discuss as we go forward today that strategies that they can employ so it never reaches that point.
Good point.
However, the next most interesting industry with the next highest level of complaints is the government industry, or maybe I shouldn't call it an industry, but the government call center sector, with just under 10% of their calls for complaints. Of course, at the tax time this year, I believe taxes are due tomorrow. They're probably triple or even more at this point, and then about 6 weeks down the road, they'll have another flood as people are calling to find out why they haven't received their refund yet.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. And people do like complaining about and to the government. So how about the ones who did really well in the industry?
Well, there are a couple. There are a couple at the other end of the spectrum, and both of them kind of surprised me. First of all is the information technology sector, which includes computers, iPhones, and things like that. Only 3.25% of their calls were complaints, and I didn't dig into it deeply enough to find out what the reason is, but I kind of made the assumption that in those industries that deal with technology, they expect a lot of calls, so they structured themselves up to be able to handle those and not even though they may get one call, they're not having callers that have to do a lot of repeat calls, which does play into these numbers.
Right. Yeah, because actually in the technology sector too, when you think about it, those are folks who are getting calls that are for technical support. And so people may have a complaint in their mind about the situation, but they're calling in for the technical support. And if you can resolve that problem in the technical support call, you prevent it from turning into a subsequent complaint call. So, yeah, that's a very interesting one. I see another one here is credit cards and banking that are quite low.
Yes, and those were the others that I expected to see higher, particularly credit card. Mm-hmm. But the numbers just don't support my preconceived notion. Apparently, they're also able to resolve caller issues before they turn into actual complaint calls.
Okay, yeah, and I have a theory there too, and that is that banking and credit cards both have a high number of automated calls, IVR-assisted calls, very high.
True.
And so, although you may have a good number of complaint calls, in terms of percentage, just because there's such huge volumes in those two sectors, the percentage actually looks quite low. Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, and you make the point in your last comment that these numbers are not strictly linear, because these are not weighted by the number of calls. Some call centers, like those in the credit card and banking industry, are very high volumes in the centers that service them, compared to some other sectors where the volume of calls is much lower.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. We've got a number of other things that we could talk to, but we have a question that's come in, right, Sean?
Yep. We have a question from Mike. Mike asks, we have some chronic complainers who call the center all the time. Do you have some advice?
Oh, great question, Mike. Chronic complainers are I guess the bane of every call center. Misunderstandings and mistakes happen in every business, but it's how you deal with customer complaints that's very important. And you don't want these customers to take their business elsewhere. So even if they're what we call chronic complainers, they still have to be dealt with very carefully. And here are a few pointers that might be helpful. First of all, make sure you've got specific people in your organization in charge of handling complaints. You want people who are trained in complaints and who are available to listen. You don't want to, just as an aside, Bruce and Sean, you don't want to call it a complaint department because you don't want the callers to think that you make a lot of mistakes.
That's right.
But you do want to have these people trained to specialize in that. Secondly, these individuals have to have a very high level of patience. Third, they have to have a good attitude about complaints. Okay, so none of us actually like to listen to complaints. However, complaints are a way of learning how to improve our business. Again, fourth is listen. Customers want to be heard and understood. So never make the mistake of having the caller just start to talk about what they're complaining about and take over the call thinking that you already know the answer and know the level of their complaint. Mm-hmm. Give them a chance to talk and make sure that you hear them out fully. It's also a good idea once you have heard their complaint to repeat that to them to make sure that it is completely understood. Then next step would be to apologize for the problem. It doesn't matter that the customer may in fact have been wrong. Still, the old axiom, the customer is always right, needs to be ever present in their minds. And finally, try to fix the problem or make it up to your customer in some way. Give them something to show them your appreciation. It doesn't have to be much. It could be just a coupon or something like that. And then last, you need to make sure you have a good tracking system to track complaints. That way you can ferret out those that are chronic complainers. There are cases where chronic complainers can't be satisfied over anything, and if you want to take the step of going to the point of asking them why they keep calling, you probably want to have a good record system backing you up so that you can effectively deal with it. Again, you don't want to drive people away if you can help it.
Right. Okay, great points. All of those great points and things that we can actually use in our call centers. I'm working now with Dr. John Anton on a client that has asked for help with executive complaint handling. The calls where people insist on talking to the CEO, they get up to the top. There's all these kinds of telephone calls that come down. What's wrong with what you're doing? Basically, why wasn't this person properly helped? I think people on the call could probably relate to that. And, there needs to be training up as well as training down in terms of making sure that our executives know that there shouldn't be a fire drill every time someone calls and has a complaint. And also, on the other hand, it may be a good idea, depending on the size of your center and the nature of your business, to actually have a specialized team of people who may not spend all of their time on these, but who are the master complaint handlers to whom these kinds of situations are referred. And these are people who will be skilled and usually trained in how to take care of anger diffusion. And Dr. John likes to, make the analogy of anger diffusion to like learning CPR. It's a technique. It's something that can be taught, and that unfortunately most call centers don't touch on very much, except maybe for an hour or two in initial training. But in fact, there are techniques that can be very well used to prevent these complaints from becoming something that paralyze paralyzes your center and also just takes an incredible amount of emotional energy away from you. So, John, did you have anything to add, or we can go on to our next question, actually, that's coming up?
Yeah. Well, we're dealing with the tip of the iceberg here, as you know, Bruce, and I think you mentioned that, excuse me, earlier. So perhaps we ought to move on. We can always address it further in another installment of Call Talk if listeners want us to.
Sounds good. Okay.
The next question comes from Tom. Tom asks, what about the unprepared caller? Does not have enough identification data critical to addressing concern, i.e. no serial number, model, etc.
Okay, so these are people who just want to complain, but they're not prepared complainers. Who do they think they are? They aren't prepared with what they need to know. John, do you have some thoughts on that?
Well, interestingly enough, that just happened to me the other day.
Really?
I was calling, personally, I was calling a call center because I had an issue and I had gotten a little bit upset about something, and without bothering to go dig out receipts and customer ID numbers and everything else that I found out they wanted, I called and registered a complaint. And
wait a minute, John, are you telling us that you're the caller that Tom is calling up about right now?
I may well be. I don't recall whether that was his name when I was talking to him, but what I will tell you is that the representative handling me on the phone was beyond patience. Well, how about an address? How about a phone number? How about last four digits of your Social Security number? We stepped through a tree of different choices until he was finally able to identify me. By the way, the center I was dealing with was XM Radio, and the reason that I'd called is because I got in the car to go somewhere and found out that my favorite station wouldn't come up. But what happened was that they walked me through the process, and here I was driving down the middle of the road. How am I to find a receipt? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So they eventually were able to identify who I was, look into the situation, found out that a termination attempt had been made because I was behind on my bill, and so we resolved that. I got it back on, and he thanked me for calling, and as a bonus, because I spent all of this time, he gave me an extra free month of service. So he turned me, it turned me from lemon to lemonade, I guess is the way to put it.
Okay, good. Well, so you were going down the highway, pulling a Maria Shriver, talking on your cell phone. Okay. But anyway, I guess, a couple of thoughts come here. And one is, I'm sure you've heard, and if not, then one thing that we could advise people to do is to put on their IVR something that prepares people to have their identification, et cetera, when they actually reach an agent. So in the IVR message itself, you say, please be sure and have your whatever identification or other piece of information they need before you talk to an agent. And, kindly put down the file phone and find that and then call us again if they need to. So I think that can do it. And the other is to have a system, a CRM system that is hopefully flexible enough to do what Tom, what your agent was able to do with you, John, and basically use some alternative methods to identify who you are. So, Tom, hopefully that is can be interesting to you and helpful to you. Sean, do we have another one?
We do. Jeff asks, we are currently having an internal debate around using escalation teams to handle the majority of escalations, or to use frontline supervisors. Do you have any guidance on what we should be considering in order to make the decision, and what is common direction in the industry?
Okay. Yeah, and actually, I'd like to just throw one other possibility into the pot, and that is Expert Hub. Okay, so I'm sorry, who was the name of this?
Jeff.
Jeff. Okay, so Jeff, we had two possibilities that you are discussing right now. One is to have, an escalation protocol. Another is to have the supervisors take them. And here, oh boy, there's an awful lot of supervisors who are very, very busy with other things, and when they start doing too much of that kind of work, they don't do their coaching and other work that they really need to do. And so one other possibility to throw in the pot, and then I'll hand it over to John to sort of give his opinion on the three, is an expert hub where you have people who are easily accessible by the agents and who in many cases are able to help the agent with the information that's needed to take care of the call by themselves. So, John Chatterley, would you like to just comment on those?
Yeah,
things?
actually, I've got a couple of comments, Bruce. The first is, in my past, I have run call centers that provided that were there to provide technical support. And so we found it very helpful to set up expert hubs like you're talking about within the lead organization, and also to have a second and even third tier escalation point for those real sticky complaints and problems that the callers called in about. The idea of having supervisors handle this, I think, is not recommended. They have so many other things that they have to do, running their teams and doing the reporting and managing schedules and all of that, that trying to stop what they're doing and put their attention into solving an individual caller's issue is just too much of a burden, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's good. And, with the supervisors, too, most of the situations I've seen where there's some dysfunction, it's because the supervisors may be undertrained and they haven't been given enough time with their people to coach and mentor them, to really let them feel that the supervisor is there as their greatest support, and obviously the imposer of certain discipline and certain regulations, etc., but also within that, their biggest booster in terms of trying to help them to succeed in terms of giving great customer service. So,
very true, very true.
Okay, Sean?
Okay, the next question, by the way, John, earlier Tom had said that, yes, you were the one. Tom was the one who asked the question with...
No kidding. Wow.
But he was just kidding.
Okay, good one, Tom. Like it. Okay.
This question comes from Paul. Paul asks, I love your idea of a complaint resolution team, but how do I sell it to my management?
Okay, good. Well, this is where you have to psych out your management. Are they big on understanding processes? Are they motivated by giving excellent customer service? Are they motivated mainly by the numbers? And you have to, having psyched out what it is that will make your management, your senior management team, give you the resources and funding needed for a complaint resolution team, then gear your arguments toward those things. And certainly with regard to making their lives easier, because they're not going to have folks on their phones or the phones to their assistants badgering them away. That's always a good thing. In terms of the money, you can definitely make a case in terms of having a complaint resolution team that is skilled and is able to show success in this, in terms of reduced talk times, in terms of problems that are created within the call center. And obviously, those people in the complaint resolution team are trained. They're oftentimes pre-screened in terms of their personal characteristics, so you have the right people in there. They're oftentimes people who are given the ability to give extra goodies that the normal person on the front line is not able to give, and they're monitored on that, obviously, as well. And therefore, they're able to contain and complete the process for these complaints rather than have them escalate. And so you have to figure out how to quantify that for the numbers-oriented senior management. In terms of quality, that's usually fairly easy to show, that a complaint resolution team, specialists are able to take care of things better. And the other thing is, in terms of the use of the time of these people, they don't have to be always taking complaints. It's just that complaints go preferentially to them in terms of routing, and then the rest of the time they can be doing other calls or other things in the call center. Okay.
Great point. Great points, Bruce. I had one comment that I wanted to throw in. Maybe this is a good point to do it, and that is everyone needs to keep in mind that for every call, and this is based on research, that for every caller that calls in and complains, there's somewhere between 10 to 50 callers, customers out there that have that are dissatisfied in some way or other, but haven't called in to complain. So the important thing is not only making sure that you handle the complaint, but doing some analysis to determine what it is that people are complaining about, so that you can drill down and resolve these issues from repeating themselves over and over again.
Well, that's right, and you know, really, this is where the market sensing component of complaint management and complaint handling comes in. The fact is that there's probably a lot of money that marketing areas could save if they just listened to what the customers were saying when they came in through the call center or through social media. So, yeah, go ahead, John.
No, I was just going to say exactly. Ford marketing could have really gained something if they had been doing that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, and now we have also social media, which is a way of hearing the voice of the customer, and we are doing some creative things now in terms of tapping into that for purposes of finding where the complaints are, so that you know, the voice of the customer can really be used by the enterprise. Sean, you got another one for us.
Yeah, this question comes from Rick. Rick says, good points. However, how do you find a balance of providing good customer service and not rewarding chronic complainers?
Absolutely. In other words, at what point is you know, being good to your complainers actually not worth it in terms of being actually money badly spent and not in the best interest of the enterprise? John, do you have some thoughts on that?
Well, yes, I touched on one of those earlier, and that is tracking calls by caller and classifying them so that that chronic complainers can be identified, and then developing a protocol to deal with them. This isn't a one solution type of answer. It depends. There are a number of other factors that play into this. How much value that customer has, what has been their purchasing pattern in the past. You know, if they're a high value customer, you have to deal with their. Maybe they're just one of these personalities that's never happy, but it should never reach a point where you become emotional or angry in the process. That isn't to say you have to put up with profanity and insults and things like that. If call degenerates to that, the best thing to do is to escalate that to a supervisor and have the supervisor politely inform people that they don't allow callers to deal in that manner with their agents.
Mm-hmm. Okay, good.
We have another question. This one actually is from Dave. Dave asks, we have noticed that profanity and raw anger have increased over the years. Is this common to other call centers?
Okay, actually, John, that sort of takes off from what you were just talking about. And, yeah, it's kind of hard to measure that. I don't think anybody has gone through recorded calls over the last 10 years and done a study, where they've had a automated way of looking for profanity or decibel levels. But there does seem to be, just in going to call centers and talking with people, a general reduction in civility in terms of the way people interact and the way that they will communicate with a call center when they're upset. And I think a lot of this has to do with television and radio and the fact that, and social media, and the fact that these things seem to be okay in terms of the society today, as opposed to 10 or 20 years ago, where people simply control themselves better. I think it's really the way to go about it. And here we do have to draw lines, because it's not fair to our people to have them subjected to the raw anger and the profanity. It is necessary, as John said, to escalate, but also to be able to have the training for the people that where they can say, sir, I am not going to listen to this profanity, and I'm not going to be able to continue with this call if you continue to do it. Please calm down and let's try to resolve this situation.
Excellent points, Bruce. Excellent points. I notice that we're just about out of time, so I not that I'm trying to bring the show to a close, but I just wanted to make a final comment, and that is complaint calls are inevitable, regardless of what operation or organization you have, and it's very, very important that you use a structured approach to dealing with complaints that includes a trained team, more experienced people that can field these, an escalation process that works, and a good tracking mechanism.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great points all, John, and thank you very much for being with us today. I always enjoy having you on, and now back over to Sean. And thanks to everybody for listening.
Yeah, John, thank you very much for all your great insights in today's show. I want to thank all the participants for all their great questions. In order to get your free copy of Bruce's book, please send an email to calltalk@benchmarkportal.com if you ask a question today. Don't forget to sign up for our reality check to see how your call center compares to peers in your industry. Our winner of today's in-depth reality check is Jeff. Jeff, please send an email to calltalk@benchmarkportal.com, and we will get you your free report. The topic for our next show is Agent Burnout, What's a Manager to Do, Tips and Tales. Our host will be Drew Phelps. And thanks again for joining our show today. We hope everyone has a great day.